Hey everyone, this is Andy Dowling from the Australian metal band LORD and host of the Andy Social Podcast. This is my nod to the old school. This is a podcast series all about the old school mixtape and compilation, where I get to talk to some of the best in the business about their first introductions to heavy music and what were on those early mixtapes. My nod to the old school is brought to you by LORD's brand new album, Fallen Idols, available right now through Dominus Records and lord.net.au. For us, Fallen Idols was inspired by that old school mixtape. And whether you love thrash metal, power metal, melodic death, black and thrash, or even a bit of AOR, Fallen Idols is the ultimate metal mixtape that throws back to the nostalgic past of when we all first discovered heavy music, but accompanied by a fresh, modern, world-class production. Here's a quick clip from track 3 of Fallen Idols called Fallen Idols.
Flying so high, head in the clouds, upward shoot for the moon, burning so bright. Some stars live and they die far too soon. The price of playing the game, where everybody knows your name, and the whole world for the taking. No more. Golden dreams are far away. Now gone. Colors fade and turn to gray. Tomorrow waits to face our fallen idols. Shadow. Rising stars of yesterday. And fall. Riding high to find a way. The legend could break for fallen idols.
And here we are. Episode 3 of My Nod to the Old School is with Daniel Dekay. Now, Daniel is one busy guy, and you've probably seen him all over the place. However, most notably, he's one of the hosts over at Banger TV on YouTube, which is an offshoot of Banger Films. Now, if you're not familiar with them, they are the crew behind some of the world's best rock and metal documentaries, such as A Headbanger's Journey, Global Metal, Maiden's Flight 666, the Rush and Alice Cooper documentaries, and much more. Daniel is also the guitarist in Canadian band Diemonds, and more recently joined the ranks in the legendary Canadian thrash metal band Exciter. You will hear the metal dripping out of his pores in this chat. He is completely dedicated and passionate for metal and hard rock, and he has some amazing stories of growing up, his dad getting him into metal, and the tapes that he owned and the mixtapes that he put together, and heaps more. If you want to learn more about Daniel and his world, you can check out the show notes over at lord.net.au as well as andydowling.net. And I'll have links to Diamonds, Exciter, Banger TV, Daniel's social media handles, and much more. But that's it. For now, this is my chat with Daniel Dekay.
I was pretty fortunate to grow up in a very rock and heavy metal friendly home. My dad was always everyone's parents were into the lame kind of rock and roll and a lot of the quieter music, and my dad was the guy who openly said, I will take Iron Maiden over the Who any day. so I thought my dad was a real heavy rocker at heart. So I remember I was about 8 years old, and I was headed off on my first camping trip with some friends and some, of course, adult supervision because we were kids. And I didn't have any cool tapes to bring, and I didn't have any cool music to bring. And everyone was getting Walkmans and had all these cool tapes and whatever kid tapes people had, like bullshit nursery rhymes and stuff. But I'll never forget, my dad handed me a couple cassettes that would go on to literally change my life and would be the cassettes I would come home and dub into making my own first mixtape. It was obviously AC/DC Highway to Hell.
Nice.
Judas Priest, Sin After Sin, and AC/DC Highway to Hell. They're 3 crucial tapes that were given to me at a very young age. So I went and I listened to the shit out of those, and I came home and I had learned how to make a dub on my little radio in my bedroom, and I basically took my favorite cuts from those records and made my first compilation tape. And then, of course, I was throwing in other stuff. I was already really listening a lot to Kiss and Jimi Hendrix and a lot of the 70s rock. So that stuff all made an appearance. But that Priest, AC/DC, and Ted Nugent, I'll never forget. Those are like 3 tapes that I think I listened to them until they broke, basically.
That's so cool. I mean, you had such an advantage over so many other kids at the time. I mean,
Oh, dude.
yeah.
But like, I don't know if it was totally an advantage, because it was also the reason that I got my ass kicked in school, was because I was the weird guy who listened to everyone was listening to what was on the radio, or modern music that was cool for kids to listen to at that time, and I was the freak wearing like a Kiss t-shirt and yammering on about Iron Maiden. It just made no sense to people. But I mean, after that, like after that cassette era of compilations, I mean, I started getting into comps big time, to a point where I formed like a little bit of a comp collection on vinyl. My old man gave me, he's like, oh, you're starting to like the heavier stuff. And he gave me 2 legendary comps, Metal for Breakfast and Metal for Lunch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he gave me that set, and admittedly, one is a little bit heavier than the other. Like, I know Merciful Fate was on one of them, and you had Anvil and Saxon and Priest. But it also dealt with and Razor was even on. Evil Invaders was on one of them, I remember. But I mean, it also dealt with some of the quieter stuff. I mean, it was my first introduction to like Kim Mitchell, Lee Aaron, and Crocus, Kick-Axe, stuff like that. So it was a good. Metal for Breakfast and Metal for Lunch was kind of like the big stepping stones for me in terms of getting into more broad spectrum of music, not just what was in my dad's cassette collection. And then, of course, when I was a teenager, there was no question about it. The most important comp for me ever was Speed Kills.
Oh, yeah.
It's like really, really important comp from Music for Nations, Slayer, Metallica, Destruction, Exodus, Possessed, Exciter, Venom, Voivod, Celtic Frost, you name it. It was like a Bible for me when I was a little bit older at this point, obviously, but that was the Bible for me into getting into really heavy music.
Going back to even just that first compilation where you're putting those records together and just making your own mixtape, obviously those albums were, really, really important for you because they sort of opened your eyes up to sort of, putting your foot in the door for heavier music. But was there like a moment or one of those songs or something which just totally just blew you away and just went, what the hell am I listening to? What is this?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, there was like 2 songs in specific, and I used them as they were the back-to-back on the very end of the first side. It's so weird that they're so completely different, the songs, but it was Ted Nugent, Wango Tango, and it was just like so ridiculous and off the wall. And like, I was a kid, I was like eating it up, dude. I knew every word to his rap in the middle. Like, I could rhyme off the whole song, all the talking, all the ridiculous nonsense. I loved it. For me, it was the most fun I'd ever heard in music. I'd never heard music that was fun like that. And then right after that, it would go into Judas Priest, Diamonds and Rust. Oh. Holy shit, man! That song was a total game changer for me. Guitar riffs and vocally, I even remember actually when I got back from that first trip, when my dad had given me those cassettes. It's like, so what did you think of the cassettes I gave you, son? I'm like, wow, that Judas Priest band is incredible. That guy is such a crazy voice. And he said, yeah, what was your favorite song on it? And we just both look at each other, and at the same time, we both say Diamonds and Rust. He's like, yeah. He's like, you did well, son. You passed the test.
That's so cool. And I mean, as you grew older, and you said you got into some of these other compilations, and later on the Speed Kills compilation was a big one for you. I mean, by that stage, you would have had a bit of an idea of all the different subgenres, or a little bit more of an idea of it anyway. Did you?
I think.
Yeah. Sorry. Go.
I think that I was aware of heavy metal as a subgenre. I think that really, like, when I'd heard Speed Kills, like, I didn't really understand that speed metal or thrash metal or death metal. Like, I don't think that really it had clicked in my mind yet. To me, it was, the comp I was picking up, I heard it could be heavier, but I mean, as far as I knew, Destruction and Voivod may have sounded the same as Iron Maiden. I was literally about to have my mind blown completely.
That's awesome, man. I mean, that's a big thing with us and our album, and the whole theme around the album is just
this real sort of love for metal and just heavy music, heavy guitars, and going back to that time where, you know, either you didn't know or you didn't have exposure to all the intricacies of all these subgenres of metal, and just sort of really just having this raw love for heavy music. And it sounds like you sort of went through a lot of that as well.
Dude, absolutely. I mean, like, my love for heavy metal starts as early as like 4 years old and driving around in my dad's car with him and like listening to Purple Haze. Like, it was a very organic beginning I had for music. I was very lucky to be introduced to rock music at such a young age, so that by the time I got older, I had such a love and admiration for anything that was heavy and guitar based that, like, I didn't even really have like a huge pop music phase that a lot of kids go through. I mean, there were certainly pop bands that were popular and on the radio that had songs that would, you know, stick in my head due to their infectious nature. But for me, it was always about rock-based music and genre spanning, really anything. It was like guitar. I would go as far as to say I just loved guitar-based music.
For sure. And no doubt that would have been sort of the foundations for you eventually to become a musician yourself.
Yeah, dude, I was like doing power slides off the couch with a tennis racket when I was 5 years old. I was air guitaring and, like, you know, learning. I always had an affinity for vocals as well. I would like read liner notes and learn every word to every song on an entire record in one night. And I'm still that way, actually. I freak people out with how many lyrics I know for a guy who's not a singer. I know the fucking words to every song ever. It's crazy. I've actually won numerous contests. You know, like some radio stations do like these hilarious contests where they say a line of a song out of context, and if you call, you can win concert tickets.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've literally won Metallica and Kiss tickets that way. and like, I called and they'd be like, "This is a really tough one." I'm like, "Okay, lay it on me." And, you know, they would say something and I'd be like, instantly it would take me half a second to pull it out of my library of lyrics. I knew exactly the song, the album, and I could sing the next verse.
That's awesome. Going back to your compilations, and it might have changed over the years when you've been, you know, your first one you put together, and then obviously the Metal for Breakfast, Metal for Lunch, Speed Kills, etc. What sort of places were you listening to these compilations? Were you sort of out and about? Were you in the car? Were you at home? What sort of places can you remember you were listening to these compilations?
So, like, in the beginning, it was all cassettes. So it was all like Walkman. So I would be, at home in my bedroom, I had a cassette deck right by my bed, and I would spend hours in there, as I mentioned, practicing my power slides and jumping off the bed. Just being a total, just like learning how to be a rock star in my goddamn bedroom, just jumping on my bed with a tennis racket and being a total nerd. And then, so, I mean, you know, I'd go out and about, and I would sit in the car and I would throw my headphones on. If I had a sister who loved to listen to terrible, terrible music. So if we were in the car and the family was in the car, I'd be like, well, you know, she could throw on whatever radio station she wants. Like, I got my cassette deck. I'm gonna throw my headphones on, and I would listen to the same songs over and over, because that's how it was then. I mean, I didn't really have a huge arsenal of tapes to sort through. I had maybe four tapes to my name, so I would keep listening to the same ones over and over and just drilling those into my head. It wasn't until I was a little bit older and I got my first vinyl platter, and I started collecting. That's when I started collecting comps, like, as you say, the Metal for Breakfast, Metal for Lunch, and Speed Kills. That was all vinyl, so that stuff I was obviously listening to in my bedroom. As I got older, I just started to spend more and more hours in my bedroom. First it was jumping around and air guitaring with a tennis racket, and then it turned into obsessively listening to records that I would go out and buy or inherit from my dad and their friends, because that was the coolest, is all my dad's friends who were getting rid of their vinyl in the 90s. In the 90s, it was like no one wanted their fucking vinyl, so I was like, hey, your kid's really into rock music, why don't we give them to him? And so I was getting all these records from my dad's friends, which was amazing. So many early influences and exposure to brand new bands. And so I really, and then I started picking up guitar, and then I literally never left my bedroom it was about 10 years probably. I didn't leave my bedroom once. I didn't have a beer. I didn't get laid. I didn't do anything. I was just at home listening to music and playing guitar.
I think it's a fairly common thing for a lot of metal fans when they're growing up. It's like when you discover music, and especially like as you said before, like you're going to school and you're the odd one out. Like there's not a lot of people that are into the same thing that you are, and so you sort of your little spot where like just there's no rules apart from just like this love of music is at home in your room, and especially when you discover guitar as well. I mean, it's all bets are off. Like then you're never leaving.
Yeah, like it was, like school was terrible. It was like totally alienated for being not into the social norm when it came to music. And I'll never forget, like you'd meet, you switch a school and maybe you're at a bigger school now, or even when I was in high school, like it's a really big school, and you'd spot like one dude in a Slayer shirt and just run across the hall and be like, man, we need to be friends because I don't have any, please.
I don't care about anything else about you, but you got a Slayer shirt, so we must have something. Let's
yeah. you got a Slayer shirt, and that's all I need to know, man. Don't tell me anything else. Just please come to my house and listen to records in silence with me.
With these compilations you've been talking about, do you still have them? Do you still have them at home?
Oh, dude, I've got my record collection is disgusting. It's outgrown my home. I basically have to move because of my record collection. It's ridiculous. Vinyl is my preferred format for everything. I still have tons of cassettes. I admittedly they don't get as much love unless they're new bands that are putting out demos and EPs, and cassettes the only way to hear them. I'll do that. But when I have the choice, I mean, vinyl is my preferred method for listening. And then when I leave the house, I reluctantly stream on my iPhone via the various different streaming sources. But I mean, for me, it's all about, I love records. I love dusting them off, putting them down, and sitting back with a nice drink and reading. I still read liner notes, dude. This is the first thing I do when I get a new record. I read the liner notes. I love it.
There's still some gold in those liner notes after all these years. Like it's just amazing what you find in there, especially the older stuff. But even the newer stuff, there's still a lot of bands that are taking care with not just the lyrics, but just putting all the extra, like the credits in there about who they're thanking, and lots of little inside jokes and things, like really awesome things that are in there.
The jokes are the funniest part. Like for me, I feel like I've learned more about bands from their liner notes than what they'll say publicly in interviews, because you start reading in liner notes and you start seeing the appearance of the same names release after release from a band, or you start to see a theme and you're like, oh shit, like they're following a theme in every record, they're making the same joke. So then you start to dissect it and you're like, oh my god, that's hilarious. You like figure out some. I'll never forget, there was who was it? It's what was it? It's an Ex-Hoarder record. Is in like an Ex-Hoarder record or re-release where they did liner notes, and they say, we'd like to thank, how do they word it? They use the word panther in Spanish. They say, which is Pantera, and they're like, the band that uses the Spanish word for the name Panther, you're welcome for the sound, or something like that. No, it was just like shit like that, like shit that you might brisk buy if you're looking at the tiny print in a CD or a cassette, but when you buy it on vinyl and you read it and it's in front of you, it's like very, very cool. You feel like you're part of the gang, you're seeing all the jokes.
Well, that's it, especially when, you might not mention it in the media or in an interview for press or anything like that, but you throw it within the album itself, and it's just this little inside thing where you're making a statement about it, and you're making a statement to your inner circle, your fans who are giving a shit and actually buying the album anyway, and that's enough, and it makes this little tight knit community. I think that's a really cool thing about metal, is that that interaction or that connection between the band and the fan or the person who loves the music is you do it through the music itself, but also through things such as the liner notes, where you can sort of really send these really cool messages and comments and thoughts through, where your fans are getting that straight away.
Totally. And I mean, I'll say in my experience when we did releases with Diamonds, always in the matrix, so like the run out matrix on the actual vinyl, as well as in the liner notes. I won't tell you what, but I mean, if there's, you or anyone listening has copies of those records, if you go back and reread those liner notes, there is shit in there that we would never dare say in an interview. There's like some hilarious, like read between the lines. There's some very, very funny inside jokes that we were having fun with it. It's like, making the thank you list. What's the point of just thanking mom, dad, and AC/DC over and over again? You gotta have a little bit of fun with it. So we started putting in funny shit, and some people might just brisk by and think it's someone's name, but if just read between the lines, there's some funny shit in there.
Oh, there you go. Everyone can go out and have a sticky beak and have a look at that. That's so cool.
Yeah,
Daniel, thank you so much. And I mean, there's some really cool stories there, and I think the cool thing that I'm finding with all these people that I've been speaking to is that everyone's got like a little unique story that's all theirs, with how they've discovered music and how they got into it, but they're all relatable. And and when you listen to somebody talking about it with such passion, you sort of go, man, like I can feel that, I can understand it, because we all went through a similar sort of thing with discovering heavy music. It's a little bit of the against the grain sort of mentality, a bit of that alienation at times. It's discovering something on your own, but then sort of finding things and collating music in different bits and pieces and just trying to work it all out. But this sort of infectious sort of period of time in our lives where we're sort of just getting into it. It's just an incredible time.
Yeah, it's it made us who we are today. I mean, comps are so important. It kind of blows my mind that the music industry doesn't do comps the way they used to. They were such an important part. Like, I've got like shelves and shelves and shelves of comps. Some are awesome and some kind of suck. I thought it was kind of funny how there was like this whole era where they used to use the word metal for comps, or like hard rock, and then you'd pick it up and it's like fucking Blue Oyster Cult and Frank Marino and Aerosmith and stuff. But like, there's so many comps that changed my life, and there's a couple labels that were still doing comps up until a couple of years ago, but they're very, very rare in terms of the production numbers that they see. So it's just, it's a somewhat of an overlooked part of a musician's development is the mixtape and the comp, because times have changed, and those now it's like, what do you have on your iPod? It's like totally different now. So I think it's really cool that you're doing this and exploring all these different and unique people who all have somewhat of a similar story, because we're all fucking music freaks.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely, man. So where can people find you, and what's happening in your world with all the million things that you do? Because it seems like you're just never stopping.
Yeah, I do 1,000,001 things, and you can find me. I'm on YouTube on Banger TV. It's a division of Banger Films. We do all sorts of cool. We're the largest heavy metal channel on YouTube. We do all sorts of cool shit. You can find me there. We got a wicked new season of one of our flagship shows coming out called Shredders of Metal. Be season 2. Features myself, Sam Dunn, Alex Skolnick from Testament, Ben Wyman from Dillinger Escape Plan. It's going to be a fucking heavy metal shred off party. So that's coming. I'm playing in, very fortunate to be playing in thrash metal, speed metal founders, basically. Canadian legends Exciter. Super cool. Probably the coolest gig I could have ever dreamed of. Out of when I was getting those early records, one of the first records my dad gave me was Violence and Force.
Yeah, man.
It was a bonsai copy from Canada, and I still have it. I actually, after I played my first gig with Dan and Al, I had them sign that copy of Violence and Force. It was a really nerdy moment. I got off stage, and I was in my backpack in the dressing room, and we were like just cooling off after the show, and I pulled it out, and they both started laughing their ass off. So I'm playing with them, and we just got back from some South American shows, and we've got shows booked through Europe up until the end of the year, and we're working on new music as well. So that band we're on all the social media, Instagram, Facebook, all that shit. So hop on and join the party with Exciter, because it's going to be a fucking busy year, and it's going to be fun. And I had this not so active anymore, but a band called Diemonds, and it's, funnily enough, we got like 2 gigs coming up, and we barely play. We play like twice a year. We've all got tons of other stuff going on in our lives. But Diemonds are playing a huge hair metal festival up in Canada in July, and playing on the Monsters of Rock cruise in 2020, which is super fucking cool. I love playing on boats, man. Let me tell you.
Who would have thought you'd ever say that when you were a kid? Like, I love playing on boats.
I know, dude. It's nuts. I've had the fortunate opportunity to play and witness a bunch of these music-based cruises now, and that Monsters of Rock one. If you are into obscure or hair metal or just like underground cult shit, like, they put together an amazing lineup. They get a lot of like weird one-off original lineup reunion type things, and bands performing full albums, or just bands that you would never see on tour. Some of my favorite bands played last year. It was super cool. So highly recommend checking out if you're into, I mean, you could check out the 70,000 Tons or the Kiss cruise, or now there's a Megadeth cruise. But if you're into the more hair metal stuff and you want to see the bands that you can't see all in one place over the course of 4 days, like, dude, it's nuts. I'm talking like from Faster Pussycat to Vane to LA Guns. Like, they have the most random lineup of all your favorite hair metal stuff. And then like Saxon. I fucking saw Saxon on a boat last time.
That's so cool.
So good. So that is a cruise worth checking out for music fans. And you'll get to see one of the very rare appearances of my band Diamonds, which is really only 2 gigs a year now. So we're stoked for that to be one of them.
Well, far out. I think we might have to have a chat at some stage again down the track, because I reckon I could just dig into your world and everything that you get into from like just these days, because there's just so much going on and it's pretty exciting just to watch from afar. But man, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and we'll definitely have to catch up again sometime soon.
My pleasure, man. I'm always down to chat. All I ever wanted to be was a fan, and shit is fucking crazy.
To learn more about our guests, check out the show notes over at andydowling.net, as well as lord.net.au, where you can hear our brand new album, Fallen Idols. Cheers for listening, and this has been my nod to the old school. Larry, please.